18. This is TV 18 and you're watching CNBC TV 18.
Presented by CanAm Enterprises.
Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
America, the land of great successes, opportunities, and wealth. Every investor has an American dream, for it is the economy the world looks up to. Hello and a very warm welcome to our special show. CanAm presents EB-5 Visa, the golden ticket to United States. EB-5 Visa program creates investment opportunities in the United States, and it allows for investors to get a permanent green card. But it isn't as easy as it sounds, for it involves a lot of challenges. The first and the foremost thing is to make the right investment choice, do it within the legalities, and invest in a market that shows future growth. CanAm Enterprises holds the expertise in this line of work, and I have with me the CEO of CanAm Investor Services, Mr. Jeffrey DeCicco. CanAm has been the industry leader for immigration services for over 30 years now. Let me start by asking you, why is EB-5 Visa such a hot property?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. EB-5 has been around really since 1990, but it's become popular since 2002, really. And the reason why is there are no real requirements for the visa in terms of work or talent or being able to show an exceptional talent or other ways that people come to the U.S. You don't need sponsorship. It's investment-based, investment that creates jobs. So if you have the means to invest, you can come to the U.S. As long as you invest in a successful project.
And how difficult or easy is the processing of EB-5 visa?
Sure. In theory, it's very easy. You make an investment of $500,000 into what's called the targeted employment area. This is through the EB-5 Regional Center program. And if that investment leads to 10 full-time U.S. jobs, you can get a green card, a permanent green card. First you get a conditional green card, then a permanent green card. In practice, it's become very difficult for this to happen because you need expertise in this area. You have to work with companies called regional centers, which are companies which structure these projects, and they have to have expertise in both immigration and investment. So if you're going to invest in a ground-up development that creates jobs, you want to make sure the development is sound, the developer is sound, and that it follows a business plan that follows the guidelines that the government provides. So regional centers like CanAm, my company, that's what we do.
How does an investor sitting here in India make the right investment choices, research about the market, and basically get any kind of help that is required in getting an EB-5 visa?
Sure. There are two main pieces. One is finding a good U.S. immigration attorney. An immigration attorney not just that works in immigration in the U.S., but specifically works in EB-5, because a lot of that is very specific to this type of visa. The other thing is finding a quality regional center, which is what we do. Someone who's done it before, the full process, which is they've gotten someone a conditional green card, a permanent green card, and then the last piece, which is the most elusive, most of these projects are structured as loans. So they want return of capital. They would like to get their $500,000 back. So you want to find a regional center that's done that successfully. My firm will return $1.1 billion in total by the end of this year. So we've had a lot of success.
CanAm has been in the business for about 30 years now. What are the trends that you have seen, and what are the investor trends you have seen, and how has EB-5 been dealt with in the United States vis-a-vis India?
Sure. Well, we started out first in the Canadian program and moved over to EB-5 in about 2002. And at that time, it was very experimental. So the investments were pooled together. We'd find projects to finance, usually small hotels, things like that, $1 million, so 2 investors. Or I think our first few projects were all under $5 million, so less than 10 investors. As the program has matured, we're now making loans. Our current project is a $250 million loan. It's a $3 billion project. So the quality of the borrowers have gone from small developers to some of the biggest names in business. So we've worked with Sony, Time Warner, Comcast, names like that. So that the program's really evolved that way. It's also evolved in terms of popularity. So the beginning of the program, it was very popular in Korea and China to some extent. And then in China, the program really took off.
I believe China is the biggest investor at the moment.
It is. It's dominated the industry. So it reached a peak, I believe, in 2016. Possibly 20,000 people applied for EB-5. The problem with that is that there's only 10,000 visas per year from the U.S. government that are allocated for EB-5. So China has reached a backlog. So there's now a wait list for EB-5 if you're Chinese of 10 to 15 years. So what has happened is from peaking in 2016, demand is now down 90%. So other countries have started to pick up the slack, which is why we're spending a lot of time in India. So we started coming here 3 years ago. Before, we never had any interest in any other countries, quite honestly, because it was so easy to get investors from China.
Right.
Our problem was we didn't have enough investment opportunities for the investors we had. So we had waiting lists, and it was difficult for us to find the right projects. About 3 years ago, we started looking to other markets to diversify, which we did, luckily, and India was the first place we went.
China is the biggest investor, and as you say, there is a backlog of investors trying to get the EB-5 visa. So is there a cap on how many visas can be issued to a particular country?
Yeah, so there's 10,000 visas in total, and no country may take more than 700. But if every country doesn't use their 700 allocation, which most countries, almost all, do not, then the country who overuses their allocation can take from that number. So China has been taking everyone else's visas for the last 10 years.
All right.
Yeah.
And what has your experience been in India in the last 3 years, coming, 3 years ago and now? And how do you see the Indian market, and where particularly do you see a lot of aggression when it comes to EB-5?
Yeah, so the growth in India has been tremendous. The program has doubled in India every year for the last 4 years. From our firm's perspective, 2014 we had 5 investors from India. Last year we had 100. This year we'll have well over 200. So the growth, we've at least 100% growth every year, if not more. We're seeing the typical Indian investor, it's very similar. It's usually not people that are my age or 40s or 50s or older that are looking. It's people looking for their children. The typical profile is someone my age who has a child who's either attending school in the U.S. or is looking to attend school in the U.S.
When we talk about Indians, how easy or difficult has it been dealing with Indians, and what is their choice of industry when it comes for investment?
Sure, great question. So they are Indian investors at first very skeptical. So EB-5 had no one knew anything about it here. So my sales team, my meetings here, they were always explaining the program and explaining it wasn't a scam. It was actually a real program. That took about a year to get that out there. Once that happened, then one of the advantages for Indian investors is the language. Quite honestly, they speak English, so our offering documents are a few hundred pages. They will go through every single line and ask questions, ask a lot of great questions. So that makes us happy because we know that they're doing due diligence, and it takes a while. It takes 3 to 6 months really for many investors to get comfortable with the whole thing, get comfortable with the whole process.
What are the industries that people are actually more interested in?
So the EB-5 program was really founded around hotels. That was the easiest way to satisfy job creation and some other things that are involved with the program. Since then, it has grown into a large development, real estate development, and most EB-5 projects are based around development. When you have construction costs, it's easy to show job creation, and that's why for companies like mine, we lean towards those. So our current project is a high-rise in New York, skyscraper in New York City. But we have done other things. We financed a train in Florida, the first privately built train in U.S. history. But you will see most popular are construction-based office towers, things like that.
So what exactly is the process of getting an EB-5 visa?
Sure. The first thing you do is select a project to invest in, and then work on your immigration petition. You file what's called an I-526 petition. So you make the investment into a regional center investment. You file this petition. That petition is for a conditional green card. So at that point, the U.S. government is going to look at your money to make sure it's your source of funds are clean, and then they're going to look at the proposed project that you're investing in and make sure that they believe that this project, if executed properly, will satisfy the job requirement. You need to create 10 full-time jobs as an investor. So that's the first step. Processing time for that takes about 2 years. So within 2 to 2.5 years, if you're approved, you get to come to the U.S. on what's called a conditional green card. The conditional green card is the same as a permanent green card in terms of your ability. You can work anywhere, live anywhere, you can not work, do whatever you want, but there's a timeline, a 2-year timeline on that green card. So the next step is, during that time when you're in the U.S., technically jobs are being created on your behalf through the project.
Right.
That's where your 10 jobs come in. So during that time, you have to wait about 2 years to apply to get the conditions removed. And that is a form called an I-829 form. So when you apply that form, if the government sees that you've created the jobs as you said you would, then you get the conditions removed and it becomes a permanent green card. So that should take right now about 5 years all in all to get to that point. Most EB-5 investments are structured as loans. So the loan term is usually 5 to 7 years. So the way this process all works, hopefully from time to investment till you get a green card and get your money back, if it's successful, it should be between 5 and 7 years. Everything kind of ties in together.
Well, at this point, let me take a short break. But when we come back, we talk more about EB-5 visa, the pitfalls, the challenges that investors may face while filing for an EB-5 visa, and how to stay protected under those circumstances.
You look into the distance, there's a house upon the hill, guiding like a lighthouse. It's a place where you'll be safe to feel our grace, cause we've all made mistakes. If you've lost your way, well, I'll leave the light on. Well, I'll leave the light on.
May I? It's right there.
Thank you.
He wants a baby.
Baby corn soup.
Baby.
I'll get that to you.
Superior technology that lets you see sharp at all distances. Verilux Progressive Lenses.
India's biggest virtual stock market trading competition is back. Catch the highlights of Stock Mine Season 6 at these times only on CNBC TV 18. Presented by ICICI Direct, Center for Financial Learning.
Class, speed, raw power, max torque. Get ready for an unmatched automotive experience. Servo presents Overdrive.
How are India's smart city projects evolving? And what is the road ahead for future-ready infrastructure development? Mint and Danfoss bring together policy makers and industry experts at the Transformation Agenda 2020 to discuss India's changing urban landscape. Watch the highlights from this special event this weekend exclusively on CNBC TV 18.
I want to buy a 1 BHK flat by the end of this year, but I don't know if it's the right time.
Do I need a real estate agent or can I buy the property directly?
Do I need insurance for my new home? I mean, is it really required?
Under construction properties are much cheaper than the ready-to-move-in ones, but you never know about these possession delays. So what should I choose?
I want to build my first home in my village. How is a land loan different from a home loan?
Need help in buying your first home? We'll help you make the right choice.
Today, demand and supply is the only important parameter that is
driving any micro market in terms of appreciation.
We will help you take the best bets with your property buys based on location and supply ratings for key markets across India.
Send your queries to home@nw18.com. First time home buyer, your search for the perfect first home ends here. At these times. Only on CNBC TV 18. He is the big bull of the Indian stock markets.
The flow of local money into markets is just the beginning. And I don't think this flow is going to stop. अभी तो खाली trailer आया है. India's macros are much better than the other emerging markets. India is doing well and will do well. Good banks who have legacy problems are a very attractive investment. I'm extremely bullish on banks, especially those who are in trouble. And I'm trying to make a bet in health because I think health is a crying need. Mr. Modi is the most towering leader this country has today. I don't think the Congress or the opposition has got a credible leader as a prime minister. The next government is going to be a BJP government. It's not going to be a Khichdi government.
The big bull, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, a CNBC TV 18 exclusive. At these times. On CNBC TV 18 and CNBCTV18.com.
Welcome back to our special show. CanAm presents EB-5 visa, the golden ticket to the United States. We've been talking about the EB-5 visa on the show, and with us talking about it is the CEO of CanAm Investor Services, Mr. Jeffrey DeCicco. Jeffrey, if I could ask you now particularly about the challenges, what are the challenges that come in the way of filing for an EB-5 visa?
One is from the project side, which is the project going to be a viable project, and is it going to create jobs in the U.S., which is the purpose of the program. The other is the investor must show a source of funds. So their investment is $500,000, but it has to be, and I'm using an Indian term, white money. So you need to be able to document that, and that can be quite a painstaking process. Sometimes, even if you have a property that you sell, and you've owned it for 15 years, the U.S. government will want to know where did you get that property and be able to show documentation of how you acquired that property. And also, if you're showing funds from your earnings, they want to see that you've been able to live and save $500,000 from your earnings legitimately in the past. So that can be quite challenging, and especially we've noticed in some of the more agricultural parts of the country.
And what are the mistakes, the most common mistakes that people make while approaching someone who's giving them guidelines or advice about EB-5 visa, and moving on from there also while filling up the papers and doing the legalities, which I believe take from 3 to 6 months' time? What are the mistakes, typical mistakes that people could make?
Sure. I think the biggest mistake that people make is they look at EB-5 as an investment and also as a way to get a green card. And for us, that's not the way it is. Your primary focus should be getting your green card first, getting your $500,000 back at the end of the term, which is usually 5 to 7 years. Profit, it should not be an objective. Our owner, Tom Rosenfeld, likes to say, I'm not smart enough to get you a green card and pay you a lot of interest. The people we work with, they use EB-5 because it's a cheaper form of financing. So they're not paying very high interest rates. So in order for regional centers to make money and for them to supervise the projects and get involved, usually the investors get very little interest. That was probably the biggest difficulty we had in translating to the Indian market. People are savvy, they're smart, they make money here all the time. A lot of entrepreneurs, they say, why would I give you $500,000 to earn little or no interest? And the reason is, quite honestly, I don't believe anybody who's ever offered returns in EB-5 along with a green card has ever actually returned money. All the success stories I know are for projects where there was very little financial gain, but people got their money back and got green card.
How important is it to choose the right consultant for getting an EB-5 visa? Because there are so many now that it is difficult for a clueless investor with money to actually make the right choice.
Right. That is become a huge challenge in India. Everyone was in China. It was very easy to find investors. So all of these new regional centers popped up and went there to start out. And now everyone is being shut out of China. They're coming to India. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. The results of going with the wrong person can be devastating. So if your project, you make an investment of $500,000, which is a lot of money for anyone, the first thing that could happen is if the project's not built or suffers a failure while it's being built, If there's no job creation, you won't get to come to the U.S. So not only could you lose your money, but you could also not get immigration. That would be devastating. Let's say the project is built successfully and the jobs are created, you get your green card, but the developer suffers a bankruptcy or something else happens. You may not get your funds back. So we've seen failures at every different stage in EB-5, and as well fraud.
Given the current political scenario in the US, where the entire visa regime is likely to see a change, where do you see EB-5 versus all the other categories of visas into the United States, and why is EB-5 still a better bet, and also why there is an insistence on aggressively chasing it at the moment?
So EB-5 has grown tremendously under the Trump administration, at least the demand for it, because H-1B visas have been more difficult to renew. There's been restrictions placed on them, and also because parents, most of our investors are doing it for their children. So you have parents who will spend $500,000 to send their child to a school in the U.S. Now when they graduate from college, they're forced to go find an employer who will sponsor them.
Correct.
Once they're sponsored, they can't leave. They can't really get promoted technically. So they're kind of stuck almost as an indentured servant to that company. It's great for the companies. They get brilliant, young, smart people under market value. So for parents who have the means, and I'm not saying it's easy to have those means, but if you have those means and you're spending $500,000 for college already, why not loan $500,000 to an EB-5 project and then offer your child a way to work just as any other American would? So it opens up a lot of opportunities. So lately, these restrictions under the Trump administration on immigration have really spurred demand. So we're seeing Indian demand within the United States just as great as Indian demand in India. So a lot of our investors are coming from inside the United States already on green cards. And some of the stories are very sad. You'll have Indian families that have been in the U.S. for 5 or 10 years. They have children who are U.S. citizens, born there, and now they're facing possibly having to leave. So we have quite a few investors that fit that profile.
When we talk about other visas and EB-5, they all are going through a change, and I believe EB-5, the investment amount is also likely to change. What is the buzz around that?
So it's been, the EB-5 program itself is a permanent program. The regional center program, the one that CanAm participates in, is only a temporary program that's subject to renewal. It's been up for renewal for 2 years now and has only been renewed in short-term renewals. The next renewal is coming September 30th. Some of the proposed changes are raising the investment amount from $500,000 to around $1 million. That's a pretty big jump, obviously, but the investment amount hasn't changed in 20 years. So as we all know, no asset or no price remains unchanged for 20 years. So I think everyone in the industry is okay with that change. Some of the other proposed changes are really where the fighting is happening inside the program. So it's back and forth between developers in big cities and small rural areas about what the program will look like. Why that's important is because regulators have the ability to change the program on their own before September 30th. So there has been talk now that the regulators are going to come in without congressional approval or the government voting on it and institute their own changes. They've threatened to do that in the month of August. So that has actually made demand really grow in India especially. I think most investors, if they knew they had a chance to invest $500,000 now and they missed it and went to $1 million, it'd be very difficult to recover from that and to make the investment later.
How do you see the overall financial structure in the U.S. changing? Is it a good time for investment, or given the leadership and the buzz around it, is it shaky? With your experience of over 30 years of the enterprise, is it a good time, and what does the future hold for the economy?
This is the best business outlook I've seen in my adult life. We have low corporate taxes now. We have unemployment well below the natural rate. We just hit 3.8%. There's actually more job openings than there are unemployed in the U.S. at this moment. So really tight job market. So it's very easy to find a good quality job in the U.S. So I think the opportunities are tremendous. I just spent some time out in Silicon Valley. There, the place is a buzz. And a lot of Indian nationals there going there. Technology sector is really heating up. Technology is fantastic in the U.S.
Well, on that promising note, we have to end the show right here. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. And thank you so much for watching. I hope we answered all your questions about the EB-5 visa.
Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.
Presented by CanAm Enterprises.